Hey, what's up? My name's Samuel Leeds and I'm a property investor. I've been investing in property now for 12 years. I've done over 300 property deals, and this week you're in for a treat because I'm going to be answering your property investment questions. So please do me a massive favor, smash the like button and also drop a question in the comment box below. There's no question that can be too stupid or too complex. I've probably been through it all, and if I haven't, I'll just tell you that I don't know. So comment below and let me get answering. So we had dream chasing. Say, when buying a property on completion, is it best to remove the current tenants and give it a refurb, or keep the tenants as they've already got a good renting history? So dream chasing 247, if the property needs a little bit of a refurb and it's a little bit run down and you've got tenants in there, it's probably better to remove the tenants and give the property a lift, because do you really want a property that's a bit shabby with probably shabby tenants? I wouldn't just buy a house that needs a refurb and leave the tenants in, generally speaking. The only way I would buy a property with existing tenants would be if it was a nice property, done to a high standard, the tenants are paying a good rent. So generally speaking, I'll buy it with no tenants. Also, normally when I buy properties, I'm going to be turning them into HMOs, or I'll be turning it into serviced accommodation, or splitting it into apartments. So you don't really want to just buy an existing house, usually speaking, unless it's just a really good buy-to-let property and the tenants are good. So that's what I normally do. But there's no right or wrong answer. It depends on what you want to do. Mohab says, I'm interested in rent to rent. So my question is, when you walk into an estate agent, what is the first thing you say to them about rent to rent? And when you tell them an agent will be done as a corporate let, but corporate let is when you rent out your employees. What if you don't have employees? But what if you want to rent it out to working professionals? So firstly, don't tell them that you've got employees if you haven't got employees. So you might have overheard a video where I'm doing my kind of patter. You know, you're not going to be able to say what I'm saying exactly because you're not me. The same as you're not going to be able to say, hi, I'm Samuel Leeds, because you're not. Your name is Mohab. So, you know, what I would say is just go in and tell them who you are, what you do. We offer, or I offer, if you haven't got any employees, I offer guaranteed rent to landlords, and then I put working professionals in. So I'll be doing it on a corporate let. I've got good credit. What do you need from me in order to make a deal? And do you have any landlords that will be interested in this type of arrangement? It's just easy. Now, it's going to be hard. You're going to get slapped in the face. You're going to have people saying, we don't do that. You're going to have people not understanding you. But ultimately, it's about saying the right things and talking to the most people. Good luck. Keep us posted how you get on. Maine. What legal documents do you need for a rent to rent? And also, how do you work out the return on investment on a deal? Detailed steps. I have a rough idea. Okay, Maine. In terms of legal requirements for rent to rent, I did actually put in the book, Property Compliance Made Simple. There's all the details of the legalities and everything that you need, but it's not really that complicated. In order to do rent to rents, the most important thing you need is you need a management agreement. So you need a management agreement between you, which is in your company, so it's a company let, between you and the landlord. And they're not that difficult to get. I mean, you can get them drawn up by solicitors, or you can find a templated version and tweak it. So that's what you need. But your question is about how do you work out the return on investment? So return on investment is very simply what you put down, what you're getting back, and then you divide the two together. So you take your annual profit, divide it by your total investment, times by 100, boom shaka, that gives you your return on investment. So in other words, if you're putting down £10,000 and you're getting back £1,000 per year profit, then your return on investment is 10%, which isn't good for rent to rents. For rent to rents, your return on investment needs to be a minimum of 100%. Why? Because you don't own it and you're gonna have to do some work. So if you're putting down 10 grand, you need to make that back in your first year. How do you work that out? Well, you work out what your rent is going to be, your total rent. So if you rent it out room by room, what are you gonna get? You take away voids, maintenance, and all the costs. You take away the rent that you're paying to the landlord, and then you look at what your estimated monthly profit is. Generally speaking as well, don't take on a rent to rent unless the monthly profit is at least £500 a month. Again, these are just rules of, general rules of thumb. So that's how you work it out. I hope that helps, and I hope to see you on some further training soon where we can bang some deals out together. Okay, George Lau. I'm 20 years old, I work in an estate agent, and I want to gain knowledge about property to eventually become a property investor like yourself. I have around £20,000 just sat in the bank, not making me any money. What would you recommend me doing to get started in my property investing journey? So George, if you've got 20 grand and it's not doing anything, most important thing is I would start investing in yourself, because 20 grand is not a lot of money. It won't get you very far if you don't get creative and you don't get knowledgeable and you don't get skills. If you go to an estate agency and tell them you've got 20 grand, most estate agents will laugh at you. Unless you go somewhere really, really cheap, up north, and even then you're gonna struggle to do much with 20 grand. So that 20 grand, if you want it to really work hard, you'd probably be better off using 10% of it or even less. But I would use 10% of it to put into myself. What do I mean by that? I mean, put into training programs, books, CDs, networking events, hotel bills, when you're driving, meeting people, surrounding yourself with people that are doing this business, and then you've only got 18 then. Well, 18's even worse, but you've got £2,000 worth of knowledge and training and network and experience. So that's probably what I would advise for you to do. But hey, good luck, and if you need any help, give me a shout. Razvan Gabriel, how would you invest £30,000? Okay, so assuming that I've already got the knowledge, okay, how would I invest £30,000? Let's assume that I did have 34 and I used 4,000 to invest in myself and build my network and my team. So 30 grand, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna find a cheap, rundown property, and I'm gonna put my 30 grand down as a deposit. I'm gonna use the rest on bridging finance. I'm then gonna get a loan to develop the property and do it up to a high standard, add value, and then I'm gonna get a buy-to-let mortgage and I'm gonna refinance it and I'm gonna pull out all or most of my initial 30 grand. Get my money back, and then I'm gonna have a free house effectively that I rent out and get paid month by month on. That's what I'm gonna do. And then wait for capital appreciation or getting a small rental income coming in. Abid says, if you have an 8-bed property, would you convert it to 2 4-bed HMOs or keep it as an 8-bed HMO, bearing in mind the costs involved with the conversion to 2 flats? Or could you consider converting the property into 4 2-bed single flats? Thanks. Abid, without knowing the exact address and the floor plans and stuff, I won't be able to give you advice like specific, but my answer's very simple. I would say, look at the different options, work out how much it's going to cost you to do that conversion, and then look at the end values. And then just simply work out which one's going to be the most profitable for you. So in other words, if you run it as an 8-bed HMO, which is what it is currently, let's say the property's worth 200 grand. Well, if you spend 50 grand splitting it into flats and the rent is the same and you only increase the value by 50 grand, then it's pointless. So you just need to look at what your options are. How much is it going to cost? What's the end value? And what's the profit? If you turn it into flats and it costs you 50 grand, but then you add 100 grand's worth of value, then you've made 50 grand there. So that's not bad. So just look at what the most profitable option is. I'd also probably be advised with some local agents as well. I'd probably speak to the estate agents, see what the demand is in the area. You know, is it going to be better renting it as flats? What are people looking for? Look at the supply and demand of the particular area in mind. Hope that helps. Bash of Clans. I want to get into deal sourcing. What's the best way to get started? PS, the crash course was epic. Great stuff. So you've been to the crash course, you know how to find deals, you know how to work out the return on investment and calculate and crunch numbers. Now you want to start packaging and selling deals. I would very, very simply speak to some investors and say to them, what kind of deals are you looking for? That's it. They'll tell you what they're looking for, and then if would close them. If I can find you a property just like that, would you be prepared to pay me a £2,000 finder's fee? Those are the two questions. What are you looking for? And then when they tell you, if I can find it, would you pay me a fee? Find 3 or 4 investors that tell you that they would pay you a fee, and then go find that deal for them. Very straightforward. All right, Big Boss says, can you do BRRR strategy through buy-to-let mortgage? No, not really. If you're doing the BRRR strategy, which is buy, refurbish, refinance, rent, and you're trying to buy it on a buy-to-let mortgage, you're not buying it to let it. You're buying it to refurbish it, and then refinance it. So you don't want to get a buy-to-let mortgage, you want to buy it cash, or you want to get a bridging loan to do that. I hope that helps. All right, one or two more questions. Paul Harris. I found a 4-bed and a 5-bed next door to each other in one of the top 5 growth cities. 3 miles from the city centre. Have you had experience of buying 2 adjoined properties in a single transaction? Is that even possible? Yet to offer, but the numbers show infinite return on a BRRR HMO strategy. Paul, yeah, it is possible. I have actually had experience with this, and I actually had a bad experience. I'll tell you about it anyway, and hopefully it will help. So yeah, some lenders, in my experience, I was buying a property and I was buying a property next door to it, and the lender wouldn't lend me the money. And I was like, why not? You'd lend me the money on that one, and you'd lend someone else the money on that one. Why won't you lend me the money on both of them? And I think what the problem was is lenders fear that you'll buy 2 properties, they'll lend you, let's say each property is worth 200 grand. So you'll buy that for 200 grand and you'll get a mortgage on it. You'll buy that for 200 grand and you'll get a mortgage against it of 75% loan to value. And then you'll knock down the walls, or you'll put some doors in and you'll turn it into one big property. But that's the opposite of BRR, because if you turn it into one big property, I'm not saying you're going to do this, but this is what they fear. If you were to turn it into one big property, because you own the 2 properties, and you bought them both for 200 grand each, the end value would actually go down because you've turned 2 houses into one. It's the opposite of title splitting. The end value might be 300 grand for the one big house, but you paid 400 grand, which means that you're now over leveraged and the lender's now concerned. So if you're trying to get a mortgage on 2 properties next door to each other, a lot of lenders will be a bit concerned about that. However, if that's not your intention, you're planning on doing something different, but you just like them and they're next to each other, have a chat with a mortgage broker and just ask them to speak to different lenders and see if they can help. But I have experienced it. That's my experience, but I'm sure you can pull something out the bag. Good job, Paul. Last question, Hugo Thomas. If you purchase a cheap 2-bed buy-to-let property up north for around about 70 to 80,000 pounds, would you advise a single let or rent out for 2 separate tenants? So if you're buying a little cheap 2-bed house and you want to rent it out to 2 tenants, it's not going to work, and let me tell you why. Let's say you've got 2 beds and you're thinking, actually, I could rent the whole house out for £500, or I could rent each room out for £400. And then I'll get £800 a month instead of £500. But don't forget, when you're renting out rooms, you have to pay the utility bills. So the utility bills are probably going to be a few £100 a month, council tax, gas, electric. If you're paying the utility bills, and it's a few £100 a month, okay, you might get £800 instead of £500, but then you've got to pay the bills. So you're left with the exact same you would have been in the first place. So generally speaking, if you're going to rent something out as a multi-let, it needs to be a minimum, normally, of 3 people. 4 or more is ideal, because just bear that in mind. Normally, if you're renting out rooms, they expect the bills included and you need to factor in bills. So generally speaking, if it's a 2-bed house, I would just rent it out as a single let to a family home, unless you can start turning reception rooms into bedrooms. But of course, then there's a whole host of other factors like the area and the demand. So I hope that's helpful. If you want to do HMOs, serviced accommodation, title splitting, and you want to do it properly and successfully, I'd like to invite you to join me at my Property Investors Crash Course. It's a free course. It's virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home. But just because it's virtual, it feels like a real event. It is a real event. It's just done from, I'm on stage with my flip chart and everything, but you're at home, logged in, interacting with me. So I'll leave a link below. It's free to attend. There's a £1 booking fee just to check you're a real person. But I really hope to see you at the Property Investors Crash Course. Or just keep asking me questions on these videos, comment below, or do both. But either way, take massive action. I hope to see you win. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.